to take a few minutes and catch everyone up on what the finances of the church are all about. And so to have that conversation, I brought in a couple friends here. Bill Williams is the chair of our finance committee. And our finance committee also has a couple different officers. One of those people, Amber Carpenter, is in charge of all church income. I think the title is officially financial secretary.
Yes.
But you monitor all the income, and we have a treasurer who monitors all the expenses.
Yep.
And so the two of you are with us today that we might have some conversation to help the congregation know more about how we handle finances here at the church. And that might actually be the best place to start. Bill, how are financial decisions made here at the church?
Well, Brad, first the finance committee is elected to 3-year alternating terms. The finance committee cares for the budget. We look at the month-to-month expenses and the income and the P&L statements. We make budget recommendations to the church council, which is made up of all the church committee leadership, which then recommends the budget to an all-church meeting.
So at the end of the day, really, the members of the church are the people who decide how the church's money is spent.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. So Amber, one of the things that's very important is understanding when we give money to the church, how does the church care for it? How, from the moment we give it to the moment it's spent, how is it watched over and cared for?
Well, every Sunday after church, with offertory and the donations that are given to us, we always have 2 people with the funds at all times to make sure that it is well taken care of. We have the 2 counters or 2 finance member volunteers take the funds to the counting room in which it's recorded and then later deposited into the bank account.
So that all happens on Sunday, that it's washed over, counted, and immediately deposited?
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to make sure that everything is taken care of on site and then taken to the bank as soon as everything is sealed out.
How about electronic giving then? Since that happens sort of just at different times, how do you guys keep track of that?
That is, electronic giving is reconciled every 2 weeks, in which we can go through and just ensure everything is going to the correct funds and tracking the amounts that are coming through.
Wonderful. So that's how we tend to the money as it comes in. How do we make sure the money is spent in the right way?
Well, with the funds that come through, everything is allocated within the budget to make sure that the appropriate funds are given to the correct ministries and that all expenses are taken care of appropriately. We do also ensure that we have 2 authorized signatures on the checks when we do make those payments.
Wonderful. So Bill, what budget is being proposed for 2017?
Well, Brad, there's no certain answer to that because we haven't had we don't have pledges yet.
So the church doesn't make decisions on what to spend until we know what generosity is being offered.
Exactly. That would not be good stewards of our financial resources to do it any other way.
Okay. So since we don't have a budget proposed yet, we do have sort of a tentative idea, though. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. If income doesn't go up, we do know that expenses are going to go up and building income is going down. If there's no growth from the congregation in the form of pledges, then the budget will shrink. We're currently in a flat budget mode of $265,130.
So right now that's assuming we see some growth in the congregation, the hope is to remain flat with our budget.
Correct.
So we can talk a little bit about what 2016 has looked like to get a sense of what that, if we hold that flat budget, what that would look like in 2017.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about some of those percentages. Like, what does our income look like roughly?
Okay, 60% of our income comes from the congregation, at least it did last year. Building use and rental is 20%, and the preschool income is 20%.
So the congregation doesn't fully fund what it takes to run the ministries of this church?
Absolutely not.
So speaking of what it takes to run the church, let's talk expenses. What's some of the breakdown with where our expenses go?
Okay, based on the 2016 budget, staff expenses were 52%, programming and outreach 12%, building 20%, administration 2%, tithe to UMC, United Methodist Church 13%. We're growing into this and we'll fall short this year, but we're making progress. And rebuilding our savings is 4%.
So we don't have a large savings account as a church?
No, we do not.
So when unexpected things happen, does it actually end up just coming out of other areas of the budget?
It comes from planned expenses for committees, it comes from trustee money, and it comes from savings. What is our tithe to the United Methodist Church, and what does it do?
So every United Methodist Church in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah is asked to contribute 13% of their income to the Rocky Mountain Conference of the United Methodist Church. That's our region that we're a part of. In some denominations around the world, often the big church gives money to little churches. It's not the case with the Methodist Church. We believe that every local congregation should be contributing to something bigger than itself. So we give 13%. That's our goal. We won't hit 13% this year. We tried, but when we've had unexpected expenses, that's an area that's been trimmed, and that's very difficult. But as we've looked at things now, we give our 13%, and it funds things like the work of our bishop and superintendents, justice ministries, outreach. Some of it even then goes from that Rocky Mountain Conference to the global United Methodist Church. So about 13% of what we put into our offering plate goes to this larger United Methodist work of fighting malaria, educating children in Africa, some college scholarships. I myself am the recipient of money to help me get through seminary that came from folks putting money in the offering plate knowing it was going to something bigger. These are ways that we contribute to the larger United Methodist work in the world. United Methodist Committee on Relief, which we love here at Highlands United Methodist Church. The reason every single dollar during a disaster goes right to help people is because part of this tithe that we pay covers the administration and the network that's ready to help people in a crisis. So Bill, hearing a little bit about where our 2016 budget is and how that might inform our 2017 budget. We've been living through 2016 with the Finance Committee. What are some of the realities of that? How does congregational giving actually affect the ministry of this church?
It's the exciting thing is that our congregation has been growing, but with that comes the need for services that we can't afford to deliver with a flat budget. And if it's flat, that's not who we are. We're looking at being productive members of our community. We're doing outgrowth. We're involved in a number of other programs, and that's just not who we are. Growing congregation needs are not growing our ministry the way we think that ought to be.
So does the Finance Committee end up spending some time asking the question, what are we not going to do?
Absolutely. It comes down to trimming hours for staff members, reducing services that we've tried to offer, and unfortunately the tasks that those people perform don't go away, so that means you're doing some of those and not spending time using the gifts you've been given to make this an exciting place to be.
So when folks choose what they're able to give and what God's able to do through them to support the work of this congregation, it really does have concrete effects in what we are and are not able to do as a congregation.
Absolutely.
Brad, I wanted to ask you, what is pledging and why do we ask people to do it?
That's a great question. So what we're asking for when we ask for a pledge is people to really stop and think what God will be able to do through them to support the ministry of this congregation. And that means a lot of things. That means time, talents, gifts, service. We want people to consider, how can I support children's ministry? Can I teach a Sunday school class? How can I be actively a part of feeding hungry people? This is all a part of our stewardship and what we offer. The monetary pledge does play a very important role for the congregation because it lets us know what to anticipate. As we have sort of discussed here a little bit today, we don't decide what we're able to do as a congregation until we know we have the funds to support it. It would be irresponsible to do otherwise. And so what we're asking folks to do this November is to say, here's what I believe I can do in 2017. Now, it's not a contractual obligation, and people adjust their pledges. I get emails or phone calls, and someone says, hey, we're able to do a little more. Hey, something's changed, we can't do as much. And we adjust, and we live into those realities. But what we'd like to be able to do is have as many people as possible let us know what their intentions are. And then we take those intentions, and we put together an intention for the entire congregation based on that generosity. It lets us plan, and it lets us be responsible with people's giving.
Brad, how does pledging happen?
So pledging happens through people letting us know their intention. And we do that one of two ways. There's the traditional paper pledge card. These will be handed out on the 13th in worship. They'll be in every bulletin and available to folks throughout the week if they want to stop by and pick one up. There's also the ability to make your pledge online. The information you give us is identical, except it's an online form without the paper. It's confidential and secure, and then sends to me. Every pledge we receive remains confidential, with only myself and the bookkeeper knowing exactly what any person's individual commitment is, because it's between you and God what you give here. So then we take the information. The top half of the pledge card is about how people plan to support the day-to-day ministry of this congregation. It lets us know some basics, like will you give it weekly or monthly or annually, so we can have a sense of how to plan for cash flow. The pledge card also has a second section that talks about building a home where all belong as a capital campaign. The most important gift you give to this congregation is your support of the day-to-day ministry through what we do here every day. In addition to that giving, there is a separate request for support of the capital campaign, and that is above and beyond what people do to support our day-to-day ministry. Those pledges will be collected on November 20th in worship, or anytime whenever you hit, send card on the website, and we'll gather those numbers together. Once we've received those pledges, I bring to you a big number that's circled at the bottom. It says, without names, here's what we expect to come in. And then the finance committee does get to begin their work of seeing if the budget will shrink, be flat, or possibly even grow into all God is calling us to do.